update on the KimDotCom debacle with Richard Hart. So yesterday I reported that it was possible that Elon didn't want to be seen with Richard Hart. I thought that because KimDotCom said Elon said your fashion taste is terrible. He didn't want to be seen with you, not even on audio. So I thought that perhaps that was a possibility that Elon actually told Kim.com to boot him, but it turns out that is not true. That is not true because we have a screenshot of the tweet. Did Elon say that? And then Kim.com said, of course not. Kim.com said, of course not. So Kim.com, in fact, kicked Richard off of the spaces with Elon Musk. But I was thinking to myself, like, if you really think about it, from Kim.com's perspective, it really makes a lot of sense to throw Richard off. I know it sounds maybe a little bit controversial, but you got to think about it. Every time Richard Hart goes into these spaces, he unintentionally really takes over because he is the smartest guy in the room. He is the most insightful, and these are crypto spaces. They're led by Mario Naufel. Rand Nooner's in there regularly, and BitBoy Crypto's in there. All these big names pop in, and very few people know more about crypto than Richard Hart. And he has insight into everything. Even when they talk about things aside from crypto, Richard really takes over. And it's not because Richard is arrogant. It's not because Richard is trying to push everyone to the side, but people generally want to ask what he has to say. They want to ask his opinions. So Kim.com is not as intelligent as Richard, not as insightful as Richard. People don't want to talk to him as much as they want to talk to Richard. I mean, people do not want to. Yeah, people don't ask his opinion. He's a crypto layman, seemingly. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm not sure he knows too much about crypto even. So with Elon Musk coming into the space, and it's Kim.com and Mario Naufel as the co-host, they probably figured like, hey, we don't want. Inevitably, if Richard's in the space, Musk will probably be talking a lot to Richard, and like Richard will suck up a lot of the attention. And Naufel, who's pretty much an NPC, I mean, nobody's really ever heard of him until these spaces started. And Kim.com, who's he does have a legacy, but still, I guess they figured like we want all Elon to ourselves. But I think that's a compliment. I think that shows you the level that shows you that they sort of, in some sort of way, see Richard Hart as threatening. So the fact that they wanted him out says a lot about Richard Hart. I think it says a lot of good things about Richard Hart. I don't think he was worried about him promoting Hex. That's never been an issue in these spaces. No one's ever complained about that. And no one's ever complained about like the 5,000-10,000, Hex skins that come in with Richard and that like follow Richard into these spaces because they want to hear what he has to say, giving them so much clout, so much attention. So I think really it's just they're like, hey, we want to get all the clout to ourselves, which is perhaps not right. Obviously being a Hexkin, you don't like it, but I think that's essentially why he threw him out, because they had no problems before this. So that makes sense. I think that ultimately it just came down to Naufel and Kim.com wanting all the attention, wanting to network with Musk, not wanting to get pushed aside by the huge, personality and the charisma and the attention magnetism of Richard. That's what I'd say about that. But I still think that Richard should still be going on these spaces. They benefited him tremendously. While he may have benefited them, they benefited him. He's gotten a lot of new followers from people in other crypto communities and from just Twitter in general. So I don't think it's a reason to stop, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't host his own Twitter spaces. I wish he hosted more of his own Twitter spaces as well. I wish he streamed more, but he's busy with greater things. So I guess that's why I'm here. You're stuck with me. You're stuck with me. Can't have Richard. You'll have to have the Furu. I was looking at the chats, but one of the big things I talked about, if I could get your opinion, if you don't want to comment on it, that's okay too. But the Kim.com situation where Richard was in the chat with Elon, and Kim.com booted him.
Yeah, Richard really handled that like a boss, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's just so consistent, which you just don't see from people in his position. They don't give so much transparency. They haven't spent hundreds of hours answering questions on YouTube. I mean, you can go to a website called hexsearch.io, and you can pull up, you can search everything Richard has ever said on his YouTube channel with perfect language recognition. So you could type in Maddie Allin, and it would pull up every time Richard has mentioned me or like the Hex conference or anything that I'm involved in, which you would think that would be really hard for anyway. Like, I'm impressed with the AI that it can pick up on such a strange name as my own.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess so the way I saw it is like I kind of understand where Kim and Mario are coming from, in the sense that they figured, I think like, you got to think, why are they booting Richard? Because Richard has really benefited their spaces tremendously, because every single space that he goes into, he brings 3 to 6, 9,000 people with him, right? I mean, it really puts them on the map. It's gotten a lot of people following them. I wouldn't have followed Mario Nalfo if not for Richard. I wouldn't have followed Kim.com. I'm sure I'm not the exception. But the point is, when Richard comes on, he is the smartest guy in the room. He knows more about crypto than pretty much everyone. And he's also very well-rounded. So even when the topics aren't crypto, it's not because of his, because he intentionally takes over, but generally people want to ask what he has to say. People want to interact with him. So I figured that Kim.com sort of thought that this is his chance to really interact with Elon, and maybe he was a little bit threatened, and he was a little bit worried that Elon would want to talk to Richard more.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Richard is I think that's exactly what Kim was thinking. He had an agenda of like, trying to free his friends, and that's, like, that's understandable too. I think that, Richard is the organically most popular person in crypto on Twitter. I don't know I've ever, like, our conversation right now is making me realize that, it's like, It wasn't always that way. There were other people that were more popular than Richard, but Richard keeps hitting home runs with all of the analysis and, transparency and freedom that he creates, financial freedom, freedom of thought and ideas and stuff. So yeah, it really didn't bum me out that much once I sat back and thought about it, because it's like, Richard will definitely get his day with Elon.
Yeah. He does. You could tell he's one of those people that when people underestimate him, or people, slight him, he wants to show them that he wants to show them that they were wrong and that they should have respected him.
Kim wanted something from Elon. Mario wanted something from Elon. Richard didn't want anything from Elon.
What did they want?
Clout.
Yeah, it's true.
Kim wanted Elon to post a poll asking whether Julian Assange and Edward Snowden should be let back into the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he did do that, actually.
Yeah. That was that may have been his whole motivation for participating in Twitter Spaces from the beginning. He may have been planning this for weeks to get Elon into a space to ask him that question. And so, like, people have their own political beliefs that I don't really get into, but when it comes to, like, financial sovereignty and like doing the right thing and everything, I'll stand up for those things for sure.
Fair enough. I guess so. The question I had was, so Richard was saying after that happened, like, should get our own space, shouldn't have to suck middleman D. The way he put it. Do you think that he should continue to go into these spaces? What do you think?
I think he'll have a good sense of that. Like, from moment to moment. If you're asking like, what do I predict? I mean, you heard the 2-hour Richard Hart Spaces that was like in the middle of the night after the Elon Spaces.
Yeah. I heard it the next day, but yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that like 2 or 3 people were asking, were basically like pleading with Richard, like, please, like, do more spaces, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, that's a really fine line to ask a founder to do work for you because he doesn't work for us.
That's true.
But at the same time, it's like, who's your favorite sports player?
I haven't been following sports, but I like Curry.
Okay. So if, you know, for me, if it's Michael Jordan or something, it's like, you know, like as a fan of Michael Jordan, I will always ask Michael Jordan to play basketball. You know, it's a no brainer. And so just as long as kind of like experts in the space, I would say if we are always checking our own thinking about what is the difference between something where it's more of a security versus like meets 0% of security regulations, which is really only in the US. But you know, that's kind of, I don't want to say it's a spectrum, but it's you know, there are lots and lots of things that makes Hex not a security. And I can't think of anything that makes it a security. And there's a reason why things are the way they are, with the community being organic, decentralized. I run the Hex conference. I ask Richard if he will join. He can say no. He's not paying me. I'm not paying him. You know, it's like, it's all like, when it comes to the community, it's beneficial for the community to be organic, decentralized, et cetera, et cetera. And so somehow as a community, we have to balance our need for like fandom of Richard, but also then like to have our own leadership.
Fair enough. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that would not having to always ask him to do stuff is definitely brings it more on the side of not being a security. But I guess in terms of for his popularity as a self-help guru, as somebody who wants to change the world, I would say what I said is I still think he should be going on the spaces, because I've never seen him get so many followers on Twitter in such a short period of time as when he started going on these spaces. And not necessarily for talking with KimDotCom or Nowful, but there are always these huge names in there that have never heard of Richard, and then their fans kind of get exposure to him and things like that. So I think it would be a shame, in my opinion, if he would stop. I think it was. What do you think?
Well,